What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you with another solo video today. We are going through the remaining matchups of Week 15, your fantasy semifinals, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. We're going through them all, and we are deciding who you should start, who you should sit, who you should flex, all that kind of stuff. But before we do that, guys, as always, there are timestamps in the description. If you want to hear about a particular game, you can just go to the timestamp, hit that particular game, and then you don't have to hear me talk about the rest of the games. As always, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and we are going to get right into this. So let's hit the intro. All right, the first game we have on the docket here, we have the Buccaneers at Falcons. As I mentioned on Wednesday's video, this is going to be one of the more higher-paced games of the slate. At the quarterback position, you're going to be starting Tom Brady in this one and sitting Matt Ryan. So I think you're still starting Tom Brady regardless of whether or not Rojo plays. However, over the past 5 games, the Falcons' defense has allowed only 4 passing touchdowns and 189.6 passing yards per game. They've played some bad quarterbacks as the ones listed there, but they are posting solid numbers against the pass and have been ever since Dan Quinn's firing. The Falcons defense also hasn't allowed more than 27 points per game since week 4, which is the week that Dan Quinn eventually got fired for that game. So I think Tom Brady and the Bucs passing offense is like, I really don't know what to make of this matchup for them, to be honest. On one hand, Rojo being out for this game combined with the high pace of play that is going to be in this should yield a lot of pass attempts, a lot of pass volume for Tom Brady. Neither team being able to run the ball in this game, which I anticipate, bodes well for Brady and his pass catchers. But on the other hand, games where Brady has had to quote unquote like put the team on his back and throw them to a win, those games haven't worked out. In games where Rojo was ineffective or Rojo was not getting the bulk of the carries, he's been bad from a yards per attempt standpoint and an efficiency standpoint. So on top of all that, as I mentioned, the Falcons defense has been one of the better units in the league since firing Dan Quinn. That gives me a little bit of pause about Tom Brady, and it's part of the reason why I'm kind of overthinking my Watson versus Brady decision. I'm currently leaning Brady, but it is still a concern that Brady could have a bit of a sneaky dud game in this one, as we saw from Justin Herbert last week. And as we saw last night, Justin Herbert is capable of still having good games. It may have just been the matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. On Matt Ryan's side of things, he faces a Bucs pass defense that is shown to be beatable by fantasy quarterbacks, ranking number 2 in points per game over the last 5 contests that they've played. However, no Julio Jones, and we kind of know the narrative with Matt Ryan. If no Julio Jones in the lineup, he's probably not going to be very good. Plus, the teams that the Bucs allowed big games to quarterbacks was teams that had great pass protection, top 10 according to PFF for the Rams pass protection, the Chiefs pass protection, and the Saints pass protection, all of whom quarterbacks had great games against the Bucs defense. The Vikings, however, who's the only team who didn't have a good passing day against the Bucs defense, ranked 26th in pass protection, and we saw Kirk Cousins under pressure most of that game. And the Falcons, in terms of their pass protection, ranked similarly to the Vikings, so we could see a similar mismatch up front for the Bucs pass rush versus the Falcons pass blocking. To the running back position in this game, you sit all the running backs, as I mentioned. Rojo is expected to be out in this game, firstly dealing with having pins put into a broken pinky, which his teammate Chris Godwin missed 1 game with and had to deal with for a couple of weeks after that already this season, as well as being a close contact for COVID-19. He's currently on the reserve list. I believe in terms of his COVID status, he still does have a chance to clear that and play from that perspective, but we'll have to see in terms of the pinky. They're probably just going to shut him down for this game. And OC Byron Leftwich already alluded to the fact that he's going to be out for this game in his press conference yesterday. So I would assume he's probably out for this game, but I'd assume a lot of you are like, okay, so what does that mean for Leonard Fournette? The Falcons are one of the top 5 worst matchups for the run. And on top of that, Leonard Fournette is just terrible at football and will not be the only running back used in Rojo's absence. They're going to use Shady on 3rd down, potentially give him some carries as well. And they might see what they have in Keyshawn Vaughn as well going into next season. So I'd imagine that Leonard Fournette and the Bucs run offense is going to be split up amongst those 3 guys. And I don't think you're going to be able to just confidently say, oh yeah, Leonard Fournette's going to get 25 touches. He's going to be a top 15 running back. No, that's not what I expect. I think you can low end flex Fournette as like RB 29, I believe he is in my rankings. But other than that, I'm not overly excited about him. Gurley, on the other hand, has seen his usage steadily going down since it was announced that he had a knee injury. 30%-ish of the snaps the past 3 games, and this is an absolutely awful matchup for him. So just sit Todd Gurley as well because he is not proving to be a very good fantasy asset. On the wide receiver side of things, you start Mike Evans, you start Chris Godwin, you start Calvin Ridley, and I think you can flex Antonio Brown as well. As I talked about with all the passing offense stuff, that is a concern for the receivers also. Evans and Godwin, though, should be in for a bounce back this week. The down game that they had last week, I think, was more of a result of the Bucs defense not being able to get off the field and running only 51 plays of offense, which is the lowest of the season that the Bucs offense ran last week. Both guys are low-end wide receiver 2s, and AB is a solid wide receiver 3. They may even see an uptick in volume, considering the fact that I don't expect the ground game to be very effective in this one, and the fact that the Falcons are a pass funnel defense in general. Mike Evans is set to be shadowed, though, by A.J. Terrell, according to Pro Football Focus, and A.J. Terrell in his last couple shadow matchups has not been too good, so I'm still not really concerned for Mike Evans, even though A.J. Terrell has had a decent rookie season. Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin will have Darqueze Dennard and Isaiah Oliver. Darqueze Dennard is, I believe, questionable for this game. He might not play as well. So another thing to keep an eye on. On the other side of things, Julio Jones out for this game means Calvin Ridley should see a significant bump in targets, but Carlton Davis is going to shadow Calvin Ridley. And I know probably what you're thinking is, oh, Carlton Davis sucks. He got torched by Tyreek Hill. But the problem with Tyreek Hill for a guy like Carlton Davis is that he's significantly faster than him. Tyreek Hill beat him deep on a number of those plays. Carlton Davis runs like a 4.52 40-yard dash. Tyreek Hill runs in the 4.2. So that is probably what happened with Carlton Davis. And you saw him get beat over the top on a lot of those plays. So I'm not really concerned against for Carlton Davis as a Bucs fan against Calvin Ridley. I think he's going to be able to hold him in check. And as you can see on his shadow matchups, he's held a number of solid receivers in check who didn't have that Tyreek Hill kind of speed, like Michael Thomas, who he only allowed 9 yards on 2 receptions. Devontae Adams, three catches for 33 yards. Michael Thomas again, 3 for 33. DJ Moore, 2 for 55. They moved him off of Tyreek Hill and he went on Demarcus Robinson. Didn't really allow much up there. I think he's a good corner, and I think he's actually downgrades Calvin Ridley slightly for me this week. As you can see on the matchup chart, he is expected to go up against him. It's still advantage Calvin Ridley, but Carlton Davis is a good corner nonetheless. Russell Gage, I suppose, if you want to get cute, throw him into your flex spot as like a back-end wide receiver 3. You could probably do that as well. But I'm not going to get overly excited about Russell Gage because I do think this defense is a little bit better than they're being given credit for lately against the pass. I think they can probably hold these guys in check, and I expect this game to be won handedly by the Tampa Bay Bucs. And that could mean that the Falcons just don't move the ball very much on offense, and there's not a lot of offensive output for them. To the tight end position, I'll make this quick since I've been going a little long on this game. You start Gronkowski. We know exactly what you're getting with him. He needs a touchdown every week. He'll catch a couple of passes, and that's what you're getting. Hayden Hurst, on the other hand, is an inconsistent option, and he goes as this offense goes. So in a tougher matchup without Julio Jones, I am willing to sit Hayden Hurst. I don't want to start him. And I would probably start a guy like Jared Cook, who now has Drew Brees back, over a guy like Hayden Hurst. All right, to the next game that we have here. We have the Lions at the Titans. At the quarterback position in this game, you would be starting Matt Stafford if he plays. However, I don't think he's going to play. I think he's likely out for this game. But I would start him over someone like Mitch Trubisky or, Derek Carr's already played, but someone like that if he does suit up. And unfortunately, for those of you who started Derek Carr, you probably got a donut in your lineup or very close to that. Ryan Tannehill on the other side of things is a great start in this game. He has a juicy matchup. No team has allowed more than 300 passing yards per game, aside from the Detroit Lions over the last 5 weeks. Tannehill himself, nearly 27 points per game this year against bottom half of the league pass defenses, and 19 points per game against top half of the league defenses. And this is definitely a bottom half of the league defense, if not like the worst defense in the league. To the running back position in this game, everyone knows to start Derrick Henry, but what you might not know, and you probably do know because everyone's saying this, is that this dude has a chance for 2,000 rushing yards. He needs 156 rushing yards per game to get 2,000 rushing yards. He'd be the 9th player in NFL history to do so. He's got a legitimate shot at doing it. And DeAndre Swift on the other side of things, this is the first game for him last week. Last week was the first game for him coming off of a multi-week injury. He's a guy that I really like this week in a matchup against the Titans defense, allowing the single most receptions and receiving yards to running backs. And we know that's an area that DeAndre Swift really excels in. I really like Swift to bounce back to the full usage he saw before his concussion a couple of weeks ago. I think he's a guy that a lot of people are going to be surprised at how good he is over the last 2 games. And he could be a league winning type if you have him on your roster, because I could anticipate some huge blow up games out of him. To the wide receiver position in this game, the two Titans guys, AJ Brown and Corey Davis, are pretty much auto starts, but definitely in this game. And I would be sitting Marvin Jones. And the reason I'm sitting the Marvin Jones is because I know the pace of this game, and I talked about that on Wednesday as well, is very high, and everything along with that indicates that it's going to be a high scoring game. But Pro Football Focus expects a shadow matchup from Malcolm Butler in this game, who's been actually quite solid recently, shutting down DJ Chark last week, for example. And if Matt Stafford isn't playing, I cannot trust Marvin Jones. Again, if Matt Stafford does play, I think Marvin Jones is a little bit more interesting. He's probably a back end wide receiver 3 who I'm kind of willing to flex. But if Matt Stafford does not play in this game, I am not starting Marvin Jones because he's going to see a bad matchup with no Matt Stafford. So on the other side of things, the Titans passing options should go hog wild in this game. For the love of God, can we get AJ Brown a double-digit target game? He has had one in his entire career that he's gotten double-digit targets, and yet he has 8 100-yard games in his career. This dude is just so good. I don't know why they don't feed this guy 15 times a game, because if they did, they'd probably score 40 points a game because he is that damn good at football. He does that much after the catch. He is that good down the field. Corey Davis, on the other hand, has been no slouch either. We know so far this season that he's been a consistent wide receiver 2 that you can rely on aside from a couple bad games. If you see the matchups on the screen there, we have AJ Brown against Darrell Roberts. Giddy up, as I own AJ Brown. And Corey Davis against Amani O, who's a bit of a tougher matchup, but I think Corey Davis should be able to produce in against him. We saw Devontae Adams wipe the floor with that dude last week. To the tight end position, one of these guys is a consistent option. One of them has top 5 upside on any given week, but is very inconsistent. Jonnu Smith and TJ Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson's been super consistent all season. Obviously, if Matt Stafford doesn't play in this game, that downgrades him a little bit, but I still think he's a top 5 tight end regardless. And Jonnu Smith, in a high-scoring matchup, has a good chance of catching a touchdown in this one, so I'm willing to stream him as well. And that'll probably do it for this game. The Texans at the Colts. The quarterback position in this game, my start of the week is Deshaun Watson. I think you can low-end stream Phillip Rivers as well, but we're going to primarily focus on Watson here. Watson has been a very underrated fantasy asset. Only 2 games this entire season has he scored less than 20 fantasy points since Bill O'Brien's firing. The last week, or the previous games that he has scored less than 20 fantasy points were on the road against Chicago last week without Brandon Cooks, and in a monsoon bad weather game against Cleveland a couple weeks ago. So we've seen a number of big games over that stretch and a number of kind of safe floor games as well. On top of that, the Colts also, despite popular opinion, people think they're like the best defense in the league. The Colts are ranked 11th in scoring to fantasy quarterbacks, as you can see there, just ahead of the Ravens and just behind the Jags. So this is not a defense that you need to fear necessarily anymore, and they have their guys back. Xavier Rhodes, who's been banged up, has been playing over this stretch. Darius Leonard, who's been banged up, has been playing over the stretch, and it's not really any different right now. So I really like Deshaun Watson. I would play him at QB9. I couldn't tell you if I'd play him over Tom Brady because that's the decision I face, and I can't make up my mind. Currently quarterback 8 and 9 in my rankings. But I would play Deshaun Watson over someone like Jalen Hurts if you were considering doing that. I would play Deshaun Watson over Drew Brees. I would have said Taysom Hill, but now Drew Brees is the starter. There's a number of other guys I would play Deshaun Watson over. I don't think you should be fading him just because it's the Colts. Phillip Rivers, on the other hand, is usable in a pinch, I would say. But the dude is not putting up monster numbers or anything. He has 19 points last time he played Houston a couple weeks ago. And myself, as well as everyone else with a brain, probably assumes that JT and Nyheim Hines are going to be running hog wild against the Houston Texans run defense that has been just giving away fantasy points ever since we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire go off in week 1. And if Phillip Rivers doesn't get those passing touchdowns, which I don't think he will, because I think JT and Hines are probably going to score on the ground quite a bit, he's going to be useless. Because he doesn't run the ball. He's not going to get a rushing touchdown. So you need a 2 to 3 passing touchdown day out of Phillip Rivers for him to hit value. And I just don't think that's in the cards for this game. Could T.Y. Hilton catch a long bomb? Sure, but he's going to have to catch a couple of them to make up for what I think the ground game is going to be doing to the Texans defense. To the running back position, speaking of the ground game, you are definitely starting Jonathan Taylor. You are low-end flexing David Johnson in this game, and I think you can low-end flex Nyheim Hines as well. The breakout game happened for Jonathan Taylor last week. It's everything we wanted to see when we saw him get drafted to the Colts. His reward is the defense giving up 27 points per game to the running back position over the past 5 weeks, which, again, the Texans are the worst run defense in the NFL. They have been over the last 5 weeks as well. David Johnson should be back in this game on the other side of things, but I'm not overly excited about him. He is flex worthy as a back-end RB3 at best, And I think the same can be said over for someone like Nyheim Hines. And I would not blame anyone for playing Nyheim Hines over David Johnson in this game, just because the matchup dichotomy on either side is just way too big. To the wide receiver position in this game, Brandon Cooks is a start. T.Y. Hilton is a start. Low-end flex Michael Pittman and sit Kiki QT. This is not a good matchup for Brandon Cooks, but he is a sure bet for 8 to 10 targets in this game. And QT, in the same respect, is not usable. If Cooks is back, Kiki QT is not playable. Even if Brandon Cooks is seeing Xavier Rhodes, which he's expected to see, I still don't want to start Kiki QT. He's seeing Kenny Moore in coverage, and Kenny Moore has actually been quite good. So if you're planning on starting Kiki QT, don't. I know he's really high in ECR, but I'm not on the same train as them. I have him outside my top 40 receivers. I would not start him at all. Everyone on the other side of things has just accepted that T.Y. Hilton is an elite fantasy asset now. I'm not sold personally. I'm sorry. I'm just not sold that T.Y. Hilton, his great games are just some pattern that is going to continue the rest of the season. Sure, he's had a great stretch these past 3 games, and maybe he's great in this game. But my gut tells me he actually disappoints in either this game or next week. Most likely to disappoint next week against Pittsburgh. But in this game, I just don't like. I see people saying like, "Oh, should I start T.Y. Hilton over Terry McLaurin?" Like, don't go that far. T.Y. Hilton's a fine start, but I don't think he's some top 20 receiver option that you should just never be sitting. He and Michael Pittman, though, they do have a great matchup this week, as you can see on the screen there. They have Michael Pittman against Vernon Hargraves, which I know as a Bucs fan's free cash. T.Y. Hilton against Keon Crossan is probably not going to end well for that guy either. So I currently have T.Y. Hilton at 25 and Michael Pittman at 33 for reference. I think they're both good starts. I also just don't want to be starting either of them, though, over some much better options. To the tight end position in this game, there's absolutely 0 tight ends to be started. You can get cute with Jordan Akins or Trey Burton at your own risk, but I think you're going to be disappointed if you do so. To the 4 p.m. games, we have the Philadelphia Eagles at the Arizona Cardinals. In this game, both the mobile quarterbacks that we have are both starts, Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray. I think it's pretty impressive last week that Jalen Hurts not only did well against the Saints, who are absolutely awful matchup for fantasy quarterbacks, but 18 carries is the big takeaway for me. I think 18 carries is enough for him to be secured as a top 12 guy for me this week. That kind of rushing volume, even if he only gets 10 to 15 carries in this game, makes Hurts a better version of Taysom Hill, in my opinion, because I think he's a better passer. On the other side of things, Kyler Murray, after not having any bad games all season for a good stretch, has had 3 straight games under 20 fantasy points. The bright side for Kyler Murray is that this matchup is much easier than the past couple games that he has played against. I know the Eagles are like a league average type of defense against fantasy quarterbacks over the past 5 games, but Kyler Murray got back-to-back running. Like he was just getting destroyed by the Giants, who've been elite against fantasy quarterbacks recently, the Rams, who've been very good against fantasy quarterbacks all season and especially recently. So I think Kyler is going to get back to running double-digit times as we saw last week. But in this game, I think he's going to be much more effective in doing so. And I think the fact that he did run the ball double-digit times last week indicates that shoulder injury he was dealing with should be healed in this game. And on top of that, I'll get to this in a second, but DeAndre Hopkins not having a bad matchup as he has against James Bradbury and Jalen Ramsey the past couple of weeks should be much better for Kyler Murray's upside as far as his passing is concerned. To the running back side of things in this game, we have Miles Sanders and Kenyon Drake. Both of them are starts. I put Miles Sanders as a sit on the thumbnail for last week's video, so naturally he decided to host an 82-yard touchdown and completely embarrass my takes, but I'm not sold on Miles Sanders this week as some RB1 when just last week he was a sit. Although I think he is a top 15 option this week against a pretty average Cardinals run defense, who's giving up 6 rushing touchdowns in the past 5 weeks. I think Miles Sanders is a start, but I'm not going to go as far as to say he's like this RB1 that never leaves your lineup, because not only myself, but everyone else in the industry was like, should we start Miles Sanders this week? He's not been very good. On the other side of things, we have Kenyon Drake. Although not a great matchup on the season, the Eagles are giving up the 10th most points to running backs in the last 5 games. So Kenyon Drake definitely a start in this one. As far as wide receivers go, only DeAndre Hopkins is to be started in this game at the wide receiver position. Hopkins is set to be shadowed by Darius Slay in this one, but who, despite being great early in the season, has been absolutely lambasted these past 2 weeks, or these past 2 shadow matchups that he's had. So he shadowed Devontae Adams 2 weeks ago, and he shadowed DK Metcalf a couple weeks ago, and he gave up 17 receptions for 17 receptions for almost 300 yards and 2 touchdowns over that stretch. So I'm not scared of Darius Slay, who's also dealing with a concussion in this matchup. I think DeAndre Hopkins is set to probably go off in this one. On the Eagles side of things, do not start an Eagles wide receiver. The Eagles are inexplicably putting the ghost of Alshon Jeffrey on the field for more snaps and more routes than Travis Fulgham and Jalen Reagor. Why they're doing this, I have no idea. Probably because they're a bad coaching staff, but the Jalen Hurts experience has yet to benefit the wide receiver position, and I don't think it's going to anytime soon, because I think he's going to favor more like the easier targets like Miles Sanders and Dallas Goedert. So I don't expect the Eagles wide receivers to be relevant for the rest of the season, personally. To the tight end position in this game, we have Dallas Goedert as a start, and do not start Dan Arnold. I know he's caught like 3 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks, but just don't start him. Zach Ertz has played 72% of the snaps last week, but that honestly didn't matter because Dallas Goedert was over 80%, and this team is showing full trust in Dallas Goedert to be the number 1 tight end in this offense. So I am not concerned with Zach Ertz coming back. I think Dallas Goedert is still the tight end owned to here. To the next game, we have Jets at Rams. Quarterback-wise in this game, you start Jared Goff and you sit Sam Darnold. And honestly, as a general rule of thumb, sit all the Jets in this game. Not a single Jet is to start in anyone's fantasy lineups in week 15 of the fantasy playoffs. Goff and the Rams, after being more of a run-based team early in the season, have completely flipped the script. Nobody is giving up more fantasy points to quarterbacks than the Jets. And as you can see on the screen, per Jared Smola, per Hayden Winks, the Rams have the second highest situation neutral pass rate over the past 4 weeks, and teams are passing on the Jets in neutral situations at the second highest rate. So you could expect the Rams to come out with a solid game plan to throw the ball against this team, which is why I'm a little lower on someone like Cam Akers, but I'll get into Cam Akers in a second. 80% of the snaps and 31 touches for Cam Akers last Thursday should be followed up by another solid outing in this one. I don't think it's as good of a matchup for Cam Akers, as I expect the Rams to throw the ball quite a bit, and the Jets have been somewhat stingy against the run. But Woods and Kupp, I expect to carry the load in this game in terms of the fantasy production. But the Rams moving the ball at will on the Jets should result in a good opportunity for Cam Akers to score a rushing touchdown, which is why I think he's still a top 12 running back regardless. To the wide receiver position in this game, you sit all the Jets, as I mentioned, and start the 2 Rams guys. On the Jets side of things, Crowder and Perriman have not been consistent enough over the course of the season for you to be able to trust them as of recently or over the course of the season. And the Rams pass defense is just completely fierce right now, not allowing anything pretty much. And no Jets are to touch your lineup at any position this week, as I mentioned. Since the Rams paradigm shift to a pass heavy attack, Woods and Kupp have basically had 6 games of double-digit targets over the past couple weeks. And now they face the lowly Jets, who are allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers over the last 5 and 7th most on the season. So they're a great matchup for wide receivers. You definitely want to be starting Woods and Kupp in this game. As you can see on the screen there, you have Woods against Bryce Hall. Not going to go well for him. And Cooper Kupp against Javelin Goodry. Also not going to go well for him. To the tight end position in this game, absolutely 0 tight ends to speak of. Do not mess around with Gerald Everett or Tyler Higbee or Chris Herndon or anyone that's plays the tight end position in this game. All right, to the Chiefs at the Saints. As I've talked about a couple times so far, Drew Brees is going to be starting in this game. And I think Drew Brees is a startable fantasy quarterback when he starts this game. And then Patrick Mahomes, you obviously know to start him anytime he's on the field. Drew Brees will be the Saints starting quarterback Sunday. The Saints believe he's of full health. So I don't think there's any reason not to trust Drew Brees in your fantasy lineups this week, because I don't think the Saints would start him in this game unless he was full health, because Taysom Hill's been playing okay. And I guess this matchup is not one that Drew Brees should be playing in necessarily, because he's still coming off of like a punctured lung or whatever. And I know some of the fantasy doctors around the industry are somewhat concerned with that. But this is the game they have to win. They're trying to get that number 1 seed in the NFC. And this is a team that can absolutely beat a Taysom Hill-led Saints offense, and they need Drew Brees for this one. Obviously, we've seen the effect that Drew Brees' availability has on Alvin Kamara. I myself, as an Alvin Kamara owner, I need a big, big game out of Alvin Kamara this week, and I definitely think this could be the game that we see the 40-point outing for Alvin Kamara, because the Chiefs' run defense is very bad. Drew Brees, we've seen his propensity to throw the ball to Alvin Kamara as well, and I think we could see like a 12-target, 2-touchdown type outing for Alvin Kamara, and I'm all the way here for that. To the running back position, we are all hoping and praying that Alvin Kamara sees the target share that he was seeing when Drew Brees was last on the field. So I think we basically just have to count on Drew Brees to continue doing that. And Alvin Kamara, as I mentioned, could have another just a monster outing in this one. And I think they will have to throw the ball quite a bit to keep up with Patrick Mahomes on the other side of the field. The Saints matchup, as far as their run defense on the other side of things is concerned, is still a very tough matchup. I know Miles Sanders just absolutely went hog wild against them, but this is still a good run defense. And what you got to be hoping for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because he's not going to break an 82-yard touchdown. He doesn't have the speed that Miles Sanders has, is you need efficiency in the passing game. So a lot of targets and some receptions for him, as well as scoring opportunities. He probably has to get into the end zone for him to return any kind of value for you. But the reason I am pretty confident in Clyde Edwards-Helaire still is that we saw his usage, as you can see on the tweet here, increase coming off of the illness that he was dealing with. 74% of the snaps, which is the highest of the season, including when Le'Veon Bell was not there. 16 out of the 18 running back carries, which is the most carries he's had since week 6. And he ran 23 routes to Le'Veon Bell's 6. So what we saw was Clyde Edwards-Helaire get back to feature back usage and almost workhorse usage at that. So even if this is a bad matchup, I expect Clyde Edwards-Helaire to perform and potentially get into the end zone in this one. To the wide receiver position in this game, we have Michael Thomas and Tyreek Hill. These two are the only receivers that I would start in this game. Michael Thomas likely sees his target floor increase with Drew Brees back in this game. I moved him up inside my top 10 as a result of this news. And even with Brees back, I'm not excited about Emmanuel Sanders or Traquan Smith or anyone else on the Saints passing offense. I suppose there are worse desperation plays, but I would not be starting them in any of your semifinal matchups. As you can see, Michael Thomas expected to go up against Rashad Breeland. And we also know he gets moved into the slot a fair amount as well. So I think Michael Thomas is probably in for a high volume type of matchup. I don't know if he gets into the end zone or has a big game necessarily, but I wouldn't be shocked if we saw like an 8 for 95 type of stat line for Michael Thomas. And then if he gets into the end zone, he's going to have a huge game, obviously, in any kind of PPR league. To the other side of things, Tyreek is not expected to see shadow coverage from Marshawn Lattimore. Maybe that might have been a concern for some of you. They have only used Marshawn Lattimore as a shadow coverage matchup against Mike Evans and Calvin Ridley so far this season. So I don't know, for whatever reason, they don't really use Lattimore against other teams opposing number ones, just the guys that they know very well in the NFC South. As you can see, Tyreek Hill is expected to go up against Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the slot. Good for one of the highest matchup advantages on the week for Tyreek Hill. And then Lattimore outside on Demarcus Robinson. I guess kind of a good matchup for him. Like Watkins, Robinson, and McCole Hardman. I'm not messing around with him, although I would play Hardman if I had to pick one of the Chiefs receivers not named Hill. To the tight end position in this game, Kelsey is Kelsey. You start him every week. But Jared Cook is the bigger story here. I think he's actually a usable streamer in this one. He saw the biggest bump in terms of the Saints pass catchers with Drew Brees returning in this game. He goes from a low-end streamer to someone that I actually feel very comfortable streaming with Drew Brees back in the lineup, because we know Drew throws him the ball in the red zone, which is what we need out of most tight ends, but especially Jared Cook to return value. To the next game that we have here, we have Sunday Night Football, Browns at Giants. This game actually got flexed in. I can't remember what game got flexed out of it. I think it was Niners Cowboys. But we have Daniel Jones and Baker Mayfield. I would sit both quarterbacks in this game. Currently, my QB 20 and 21 in my rankings. Neither of these guys should be relied on unless you're absolutely desperate. Daniel Jones is just too inconsistent despite the good matchup. And Baker, while he is playing very well right now, has a bad matchup. So the Giants are the third worst matchup for opposing quarterbacks over their last 5. And they've shut down some good quarterbacks, including Kyler Murray, allowing only 3 passing touchdowns over that stretch. So I am not excited about Baker Mayfield, despite how well he's been playing. To the running back position in this game, we have Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. Both of them are starts, with Hunt being more of a flex play. And then Wayne Gallman, also a flex play in this game. We saw in the Ravens game that the Browns' run defense was susceptible on the goal line. So you got to hope that if you're playing Wayne Gallman, which I will be this week because I don't have Ronald Jones likely, that he can get into the end zone. Last week was Wayne Gallman's lowest touches in a number of weeks since Devontae Freeman has been out, but the game script was definitely not in his favor. The Giants were kind of getting blown out, and they turned the ball over quite a bit, and they didn't really have a lot of the possession time. So hopefully the G-men can keep this one a bit closer. I expect them to lose this game, but hopefully they can keep this one close. They've shown propensity throughout the whole season to keep close games against teams that are significantly better than them, including like the Bucks and a couple of other teams that they've played pretty close. To the other side of things, we have not a great matchup for the two Browns guys, but you got to hope that goal line work for these dudes as well as Wayne Gallman is going to be in their favor. Hunt isn't a must start, I would say, by any means. I would actually start Wayne Gallman in this very game, or CEH or Kenyon Drake over Kareem Hunt, as prior to last week, Kareem Hunt had not been getting consistent volume and especially receiving volume. So I'm not overly excited about starting Kareem Hunt in this game, although I do have him as like a back end RB2. To the wide receiver position in this game, I don't think anyone is a must play. Jarvis Landry sees an uptick with Bradbury likely being out for this game. I'm not sure if that would have affected Landry or not, but it's definitely helps that their best corner is out from Jarvis Landry's perspective. They move Xavier McKinney, according to PFF, who is a safety, to the nickel position, which should be easy work for Jarvis Landry, who's currently my wide receiver 30. I definitely would flex him as a pretty solid play because Xavier McKinney is a safety by nature, and I don't really know how he's going to fare in the slot against an experienced receiver like Jarvis Landry. On the Giants side of things, none of the Giants receivers are a must start in this game, although this is a good matchup. Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton are just floor and boomer bust type plays that you just can't trust these type of dudes in your playoff semis, in my opinion. Evan Ingram at the tight end position should be a high volume game for him. The Browns are just absolutely awful against tight ends and have been all year. Unfortunately for myself, I face off against Evan Ingram, and he's probably going to go off as a result. All right, to the final game of the slate here. A lot of Monday Night Miracles and playoff matchups will probably be coming down to this game. We have the Steelers at Bengals on Monday Night Football. At the quarterback position in this game, I think you can stream Ben Roethlisberger, but I would sit Brandon Allen. Not that anyone was going to start him. I think it's kind of dumb to assume that Big Ben will just repeat his 30-point outing against the Bengals that Ben had a number of weeks ago. The reason I think that's kind of dumb to assume is because Ben has really not been that good this season. He's had 0 games of over 20 fantasy points since that Bengals game where he had 30. He's only had 3 games over 20 fantasy points all season, which is the same number as a guy like Phillip Rivers. So I think Ben is a streamer, but as like a low end option. I'm not overly excited. I know ECR has him at like quarterback 11. I'm not really all that excited about Ben Roethlisberger. I think he's going to be fine in this game, but I also am not going to go crazy and rank him super high either. To the running back position in this game, and speaking of disappointments, James Conner has been really, really bad lately. He's only receiving between 10 and 16 touches every game since week 8 and has been mighty ineffective in the process. If you have a guy who's getting only 10 to 16 touches, you need him to be like J.K. Dobbins. You need him to be super efficient on those touches, and I just can't start James Conner with that kind of volume as anything other than like a back-end RB2 at best, maybe even a high-end RB3 against the Bengals, who James Conner played the Bengals recently, like as I mentioned, and he only had 13 for 36 on the ground against them. And they're a bad defense, and he's played a number of other bad defenses over the last couple of games. And the Jags game is the only game where he really did well in. I think he's just not very good anymore. He's probably banged up, dealing with some injuries and stuff. And I would play a number of other running backs, including guys like Wayne Gallman and CEH. And I mean, I even played Damian Harris over him because this dude is just not playing well at all. To the wide receiver position in this game, you start all 3 Steelers, you flex T. Higgins, and you sit Tyler Boyd. On the Bengals side of things, T. Higgins has Cam Sutton in a fairly difficult matchup, as you can see on the screen there, but I think he is by far the safest option on the team. He has had 8+ targets in 5 of his last 6 games, and he caught a touchdown in the game that he didn't have 8+ targets in. So I think T. Higgins is like pretty much a 5 for 65 is like his floor, which is, I mean, what else can you ask for out of a flex play? He has the ceiling. We saw it in the game against Pittsburgh the first time when he went 7 for 115 and a touchdown. So he's my wide receiver 32. I actually think he's in for probably a pretty decent outing in this one. Although it is a tough matchup just for the Bengals offensive line and offense as a whole. The Steelers guys, on the other hand, they remain back-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3s for me in a solid matchup for these guys. Claypool, I have significantly lower than ECR and then the other 2 because we've seen his role decrease. As James Washington has been getting more and more targets and emerging as a weapon in the offense, they've been decreasing Chase Claypool's playing time. And that's really not something you like to see, considering I think Chase Claypool is the best receiver on that team. I think he has the highest ceiling of any receiver on that team going forward and for fantasy. I don't know why they're not playing him as much as they were. But Deontay Johnson, as you can see, matched up with William Jackson. Chase Claypool matched up with LaShawn Sims. But again, we're going to see a lot of James Washington too. And then Juju Smith-Schuster against Mac Alexander. All 3 of these guys have pretty good matchups, which makes them all startable assets. If the Steelers had a bad matchup in this one, I would be telling you to sit Chase Claypool because the usage is just not there for him right now. And Deontay Johnson, if anyone's concerned about him because he got benched at halftime, I don't think that's going to happen again. I think that was just kind of a message that Mike Tomlin sent. Although it is very possible if Deontay Johnson comes out and drops his first 2 targets or whatever, that he gets benched again. But it is nice to know that at least Tomlin put him back in the game after that, because some coaches like Bruce Arians, for example, would have just taken him out of the game entirely and not let him back in. To the tight end position in this game, Eric Ebron is the only tight end worth starting. We know exactly what you're getting out of Ebron. He's basically a discount version of TJ Hawkinson. He's super safe. He's kind of like T. Higgins too. He gets his like 5 for 50 every single week. Sometimes he gets into the end zone. Sometimes he doesn't get into the end zone, but either way, he provides you with a modest ceiling with a good floor as well. On to, actually, that's the end. If you guys made it to the end of this video, I want you to leave a comment wishing me good luck against the God squad that I'm going up against. I hope you guys win your playoff matchups. I hope you guys are tuning in next week for the Start Sit Show, where I will be going as in-depth as I did in this one, and potentially even more so because it is championship week. Good luck in your matchups, everyone. Peace out and enjoy your Friday.